Hey, how's it going? Seth here, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you about a data service called PIN. So I learned about PIN not long ago from my friends over at First American, because apparently First American has acquired PIN and also acquired their parent company, Connected Investors. PIN is their data platform that lives inside of Connected Investors. PIN also provides access to skip tracing data, and when you sign up for a monthly subscription, you get 2,500 free skip traces a month and also 5,000 free leads that you can download per month. If you know you're looking for this data specifically as a real estate investor, PIN could be exactly what you're looking for. So I'm going to quick jump in. I'll help you get a feel for what this website has to offer, and you can decide for yourself. By the way, if you ever do want to check out PIN, we do have an affiliate link for this. It's retipster.com/PIN. So feel free to check that out, sign up for the free 7-day trial, and follow along with what I'm about to show you. Okay, so when you log into PIN, you're going to see an interface that looks something like this. And PIN is first and foremost really meant to generate, filter, and export marketing lists. But in this video, we're just going to talk about how to generate those lists and how PIN is a little bit different from some of the other data services you've probably seen. So first off, there's a kind of an easy way to do this and a more advanced way to do it. The way that I would typically do this is with the advanced mode. So if you want to skip ahead to that, I'll put a timestamp right here beneath this video just so you can see where that starts. But just want to show you the easy mode, and I'll also explain why I typically don't use this as a land investor, but you could use it. First of all, we would go here and just type out whatever market we're looking in, whether that's a city or a zip code or a county. As a land investor, I'm usually looking at the county level. So I'll just type in a county here and get started. So I'm going to type in Sonoma County, California. And right here, there's kind of like these quick list things you can pick if you want to, but usually what I do is I just go right up here and I hit this filter button. And right off the bat, you're going to see it lists a bunch of different deal types. So this is similar to what other services like PropStream and Property Radar do, but they kind of create this profile of what they think real estate investors are looking for. And the nice thing about PIN is that it shows you right on here what it means when you select one of these things. So for example, if I click on shadow inventory, the first time I saw that, I was like, what is shadow inventory? And instead of having to go like ask support or look somewhere else, it just says it right here. Shadow inventory is bank owned, but not listed. Cool, I understand that. And when it says vacant, so that doesn't mean vacant land. That just means there's a property with nobody living in it. If you see courthouse, that means there's gonna be a courthouse auction on these properties within 60 days. Or expired listings, they have expired listings from the MLS. And this right here is actually kind of a big deal. If you've ever tried to find expired listings from other data services, most of them don't have this. And expired listings can be really useful because a lot of times if somebody has listed their property on the MLS and it didn't sell, and that's an expired listing, it's a pretty decent indication that that seller is going to be a little bit more flexible and motivated to sell because they've already tried to sell at a given price and it didn't work. So now they're willing to come back to the table. So that's just another example of one of the filters you could select if you want to. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this. We go down here, so you can also filter it by motivated status. And when it says motivated, that means it's only going to show properties that are potentially motivated to sell at a discount. You might wonder, what does that even mean? How do they know if they're motivated to sell at a discount? And when you're using this easy mode, it's basically going to select properties that have one of these things that apply to it. So for one or more of these reasons, these sellers are going to be more motivated to sell. Or you can select non-motivated, so these things don't necessarily apply to it. If you notice when I clicked that, this thing became unselected. So it's up to you if you want to do that. And over here for property type, so you could, do residential, multifamily, apartment complex, commercial property. Notice that vacant land isn't here, but if you're a house investor or any other type of investor, you can select whichever one applies to you. And then type of ownership. So a lot of times I select out of town and out of state owners, or you could also exclude company owned properties if you wanted to, that kind of thing, or years owned. Say if you only wanted to reach out to people who owned it for 5 years or 7 years or longer, you could do that. And you can specify that here if you decide to. And then over here, so property grade. So there's different grades of properties, and what they're talking about here is properties that have a certain amount of equity in them. And the reason they're able to estimate this is because they can tell which property owners have some kind of a mortgage on the property and when that mortgage was taken out. And using that information, they can kind of do the math and figure out, well, they probably have this much equity, but they don't know for a fact. Like if that borrower made a huge additional principal payment or something, PIN isn't going to know that. So this isn't like necessarily gospel truth, but it's pretty accurate. And if somebody doesn't have a mortgage at all, they're going to fall into this grade A property territory because they have 100% equity. So for value range, you can select stuff there. For square feet, you could do that too if you wanted to. Like for example, if we only wanted the vacant land ones, we could do 0 to 0 because there are no square feet. Although I will say I have had some issues in some counties when I select this, it gives me no results. So I don't know, I guess you can use that if it ends up working for you. I'm gonna deselect that for now. And then financial motivations, so you could filter them by those who have had a previous hardship, which basically means the property has been in pre-foreclosure, or if they have a lien, like a tax lien, HOA lien, or mechanics lien. You could do either one of those or neither one of those if you want. And then repair level. So I actually thought this was kind of interesting because I don't recall seeing this on other data services, but you can filter properties based on how much repair they need. And at first I was like, how does PIN even know that? Like, do they really have a way of knowing the condition of these properties? And apparently, in some areas, they do. In the First American database, the county assessor file includes property condition on a scale from 1 to 6, which I found surprising. I wouldn't ever use this because I'm dealing with vacant land and it doesn't really apply. But if you're a house investor or somebody going after improved properties of some kind, that could be useful. So once you have your filters selected in this easy mode, you just click search and it's going to take it a few seconds to calculate and figure out which properties fit inside the filtering criteria you set. And it looks like we got 191 here. And interesting thing is when you click into any one of these things, there's actually a lot of information on a lot of these properties. You can do some pretty decent due diligence on this. A lot of these things are actually like investor tools that are built in, like when it talks about property values and buyability score, and you can download comp reports and everything reports. And one other thing you can do here is when you scroll through these properties, you can save them by clicking these little heart things if you want to keep track of them. You can also click this little plus button and it will add it to your workroom. I'll just quick show you what that's all about. So over here, when you click on saved up in the navigation bar, this is going to show you all the properties that you have saved. Right here. Those are the 3 I just clicked the little heart icon for. When you go up here to Workroom, so whenever you hit that plus button and it adds it to your Workroom, it's going to show up right here, which kind of gives you like this Kanban style board, kind of like Trello, that kind of thing. I know this is what you'll see in some CRM systems. And when you click on any one of these things, it'll pop up this window and you can add details here. You can add labels here. You can put any notes here. You can assign it to team members if you have any connected to your account. You can add attachments here like images or documents, anything like that. So it's kind of cool. I can totally see how a lot of investors, especially if they didn't have access to any other CRM, could find this pretty useful. And as a deal progresses through your pipeline, you can move it over here to inspection, and then making an offer, and then closing, then listing to take it through the whole process. So that's all of the easy mode stuff. Now I want to take you into the advanced search section. And this is what I would be using as a land investor if I was trying to generate a list, because it gives you a lot more different levers you can pull and ways you can fine tune your list. So let's hop over there and click on advanced right up here. Okay, so once you get to this advanced search area, I want to just explain how this is laid out and help you make sense of what's going on here. So up here is where you're going to see any filters that are being applied. So as you start adding things to it or taking things away, you'll see that stuff get added to or removed from this little area up here. So for example, let's start with Sonoma County again. Put it right here, Sonoma County, California. There we go. It just showed up right there at the very top. And over here for type. So this is where we can specify vacant land if we go here. And you can also go over here and select the type of owner that you want to include here. I thought this was actually kind of interesting because you can specify person, company, investor, or bank. And I was actually a little mystified by this. Like, how do they know if the company is an investor or just like a normal company? Like, how would they know that? And I asked them that question and they told me an investor is someone who owns multiple properties whose mailing address is different from the subject property. And they also have company flags in their assessor file that identifies properties owned by companies. So I guess that's how they're able to do it. But you could select whichever ones you do or don't want to include here. And then for listing status here, so there's all kinds of different options that, again, I don't usually see in other data services. You can select expired listings, those that are not listed on the MLS, those that are listed on the MLS, and then those that have been relisted on the MLS, and listed plus, which means this property is listed, but significant or substantial repairs may be needed to improve the property, which again is going back to that repair level that we mentioned a little bit ago. And when I first saw all these options, like expired listings, for example, that filter alone is kind of a big deal. And I don't see this in many other data services because this can actually be a huge and very effective strategy for finding motivated sellers. I've talked to a lot of people who have found screaming deals just by talking to people with expired listings, because the whole idea here is if somebody has listed their property property and it didn't sell and now it's off the market, they know that it's probably not going to go for that original price. And they're a lot more willing to be flexible because they've had this reality check and they may be willing to go down. So just that alone is pretty awesome. And when I first saw this, I was like, wait a minute, does PIN have access to MLS data? Like, is that what we're seeing here? How does that work? And I asked them about that and they said, we currently do not have live MLS data, but they calculate their expired listings by looking for previously listed properties that do not have a purchase date within the last 180 days. So that's how they're deciphering that in terms of ones that are expired listings, just so you understand what's going on there. We can also go up here to motivation and we see a lot of the same options here that we saw in the easy mode, but we can just select them here. And something that I thought was really cool about this is that you can sort of like stack these and do list stacking. So you could say, I don't just want the properties that are vacant with nobody living there. I also want those properties that are also expired listings, that also have an absentee owner, that also have an HOA lien. And you know, the more of these things you stack on top of each other, the smaller your list will get, probably to the point of 0 at some point. But I thought this was really cool because I know like other data services out there like PropStream have these same kinds of things, but you can't stack them. You can just pick one at a time. So the ability to stack them like this is pretty cool. I also liked how when I hover over these things, it tells me right then and there what those things mean. I don't have to go like search somewhere else to find out. High buyability, what's that all about? Explain it to me, because they explain it to me right here. Like mechanics lien, what does mechanics lien mean? Instead of having to go somewhere else and figure out what they're talking about, it just tells me right here when I hover over it. These are properties with a lien for unpaid labor on materials. So maybe like a house flip that went wrong or something. But anyway, you can select as many of these as you want, just being aware that the more you select, the smaller and smaller your list is going to be. And if you do decide to stack them like that, you have to be sure to hit this toggle switch so it understands what you're trying to do. When stack motivations is enabled, properties must include all the options that you choose to display. So having this enabled and checking multiple one of these options is going to make your list significantly smaller, possibly down to nothing, depending on how crazy you go with this. Whereas if you don't have this enabled, it's going to show you all the properties that have any one of these things, if that makes sense. And then over here for previous activity, this is just, you know, if you've been looking around in this market a lot and you don't want to see any properties you've already seen before, or you only want to see the ones you've already seen, you could select one of these things too. So that's the location and type. I'm pretty sure with all these things selected, we're probably not going to get a whole lot, but we can go over here to ownership and ownership attributes. So we can select this based on whether there's been a previous hardship, if it's free and clear, if it's veterans, that kind of thing. Some of this stuff was explained earlier in the easy mode when I went through that. Investor type. So if you want to, you can only target landlords, flippers, or short-term property owners. And then for financing, so you can target properties that were bought with cash or private funding or traditional funding. Owner status, again, you can do out of state, out of town if you want. And then years owned. It's pretty self-explanatory. Down payment percentage. This is indicating how much that borrower put down if they have financing on it. Or you can even do a custom range if you want, or even a specific down payment dollar amount. And also the interest rate. And then under attributes, there's all kinds of different attributes you can assign to the properties on your list. Like I only want the ones with, you know, this number of bathrooms or this square footage or this land size. Again, all you land investors out there are going to love this. I know some data services will only let you do this by square feet, but not PIN. So it's a nice thing to have. And equity percentage, last sale date, a number of stories, all that stuff. Over here into names, so this is kind of interesting. You can target properties based on what the name of the owner is. So for example, let's say I'm looking for storage facilities. One way you could sort of try to do this, it wouldn't be perfect at all, but you could search for properties that only have the word storage in the owner name, which is not necessarily going to be that accurate because there's a lot of storage facility owners that don't have the word storage in it, but kind of get the idea. Or if there's like one specific property owner and you want to find everything they own or everybody with the name Smith or something like that, you could do that here. You could also go here and search by the seller name too if you wanted to see all the properties that they sold for some reason. Or if there's a lender involved, you could search by the lender name if you want to find all the properties that they currently own, or even the name of an agent if you wanted to find all the properties that a certain agent has their name tied to. You could get really creative with that. And then APN as well. So if you're working in a county that has like a certain logic to how their APN numbers are laid out, like all the properties in this corner of the county start with these numbers. There's all kinds of different ways that they do it. But if you were in a county like that where you kind of understood the logic of how and why they set up their numbers the way they did, you could search for properties based on that. I've never done this, but I actually do know some people who have done it this way, and it seems to be pretty effective for what they're doing. So they give you the option of doing that. And once you do have all of your criteria selected, I'm going to go back here and just review what I've got. So I'm going to remove these motivations here. Ownership, let's see, let's go with only cash, out of state, out of town, and then years owned, we'll go with people who have owned them for 5 to 100 years. And you can see as I'm doing this, the different things that are being added up here. Then for attributes, we'll say only properties that are 10 to 100 acres. And let's just search based on this and see what happens. Okay, so on my first go around, it took a while for PIN to load, and it just said that I need to try reducing the number of filters applied. This is a very common thing that happens whenever you put too many filters on a data service like this. It'll just come back with no results. So I got to revisit this stuff and start peeling back some of the things I was trying to filter it with. So let's go back to the drawing board a bit here. We'll do Sonoma County, out of state, out of town, vacant land. Let's try this again. Okay, so now once we've done our search, we can see we've got 512 results here. And cool thing is you can see pretty much everything that is going to come in your Excel spreadsheet before you even export the thing. It's kind of nice you can see that. So something I want to draw your attention to are these two columns that say phone and email, and also company lookup and skip trace detail. So this is one really easy way to skip trace each individual property if you want to, just by clicking this little phone icon in that little envelope icon. I will skip trace it. And if it has anything, it'll show up right there. You can see I already clicked these other ones before I started recording here, but you'll see that sometimes information comes back and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it'll just be blank because it knows it doesn't have anything. And other times when you click it, it will check and then it will know that it doesn't have anything and it'll say no information found. But a lot of times you will find a phone number and email address. And you get 2,500 of these per month as part of your monthly subscription. And there's tons of other stuff here that you can see. All the normal stuff you would typically expect to see: the property owner's mailing address, the mailing address of the property itself, all those other details, and even like some of the individual filters that we selected. It'll show you which ones apply here, so you know why these ones appeared on the list. So once you're ready to export this thing, you can go here and select all. And then when you select this, you can go over here and you have a few different options. You can view them all on a map if you want to, just to see where they are. You can save the search if you want to come back and tinker around with this in the future. You can also save these all to prospects if you want, if you decide to use this kind of CRM-like system up here. But I'm just going to export it. And when you do export it like this, so we're just going to call this text export. And you'll see a couple different buttons here. One of them is just a normal export. It'll just export what's there right now. And if you click this button, it's going to skip trace everybody on your list. But it could take up to 48 hours to get your final list. I'm just going to do a normal export so we can see what this thing looks like. We could go over here and click export and then exports. And it's going to pull up all the ones that we've done so far. You can see I did a previous test on Kent County, Michigan, and now I've got another one right here that I just did. And we just click download here. You can also see how many more records we have left in our quota per month. So I still have a whole lot more I can use, which is nice. And then we can pull this up and we can see all the information that comes on our list. It's a lot of stuff that you would normally expect to see on a list like this. But the difference is this includes any skip trace data that I had clicked on before I downloaded it, as we can see here. By the way, I'll have to blur some of this stuff out for privacy purposes, but just trust me, there are phone numbers and email addresses there, as you will get if you decide to skip trace. And we can see the mailing addresses, property addresses, the type of motivation that applies to them. We can even see value and value range and the amount of equity each person has, the property type, all the normal stuff. And we can also see the date when this database was last updated. So I'm recording this on February 9 of 2024. This was last updated on January 12. So not quite a month ago, but it's just helpful to be able to see how old this data is that we're looking at. And also each one of these things comes with a URL to a connected investor's property page. So if we go to this, we can kind of see an example of what that looks like and what information is included. And some of this stuff is like super helpful. Some of it isn't as helpful depending on what kind of investor you are, but it's awesome to have this. And again, I think what I like the most about PIN is the pricing and how the price structure works, how you don't have to commit to a whole year at a time. Also, how you get a lot of free skip tracing and leads each month as part of the price. If there were things I would change about it, I did notice a couple little almost glitchy type things that came up. Like when I tried to export this list, it's set up here. You must have full PIN to export property records, which I do have that and I was able to export it. So I don't know why it's telling me that. Seems like there's little oddball things that kind of need some polish, but overall, it's still a super helpful system. And once you kind of get familiar with the layout and the dashboard and how to get around and how to make sense of stuff, It's a pretty nice system to have access to. I also like in the advanced search area here, it just has some interesting and kind of unique ways to filter these lists that I don't usually see in these data services. Like again, the expired listing thing and being able to stack motivations like this, which again is not a normal thing that I've seen elsewhere. So again, if you want to check out Pin and give it a try, sign up for the free trial and see if it makes sense for you. Just go to retipster.com/pin. It's definitely something you should be aware of because you know who you are and what your needs are as a real estate investor. If you would be able to use access to skip tracing like this and the other tools available here, it's good to know about if that's something you could use. So again, retipster.com/pin. Talk to you again soon.